go live.
I just want to add something about the blood drive real quick. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's only 18 of the 34 slots filled, so there's lots of space available. So if anyone wants to do it, please sign up.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Hello, all the humans. Welcome to the Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix Sunday Speaker event. Please hit the like and subscribe button to get more of our awesome content, or better yet, become a member of HSGP and volunteer for something that fills you with joy. Today, we have Dianne Post and Tory Roberg with Christian Nationalism at the AZ Legislature. Dianne Post is an international human rights attorney and legal director for the Secular Communities of Arizona. And Tory Roberg is the former director of government affairs for Secular AZ from 2013 through 2021. She's currently taking time off from politics to care for her family, but wants to visit with us here at HSGP. With that, I would like to pass it over to Dianne and Tory.
Cool. Hi, everybody. I see so many faces, people. I see Mike Shelton and Marie Provine down there. Haven't seen y'all in years. So, and lots of folks. So thank you so much for having us. I'm going to pull up the slideshow and let Dianne say hi while I do that. Just a second.
Hi, this is Dianne, and I'm going to be putting in my 2 cents worth during the presentation. And then depending upon how time goes, we'll talk about some other issues related to Christian nationalism.
And my video keeps going in and out, so that you will be able to hear my voice. So welcome to our presentation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Secular AZ. If you are not familiar, we are Arizona's secular, a voice for secular government since 2010. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and the work that we do. We are a coalition, so we're made up of member groups from all over the state. And that includes Kingman, Sierra Vista, Prescott, Flagstaff, Mesa. Of course, we have HSGP. We have the Phoenix Atheist Meetup Group. So we are not just a few people sitting in a room making decisions. We are a statewide coalition of freethinkers and atheists and some religious folks too, from all over the state. What do we do? Oh, look, there you are, Dianne. Love your smiling face. So basically, we are our legislative program. We organize, we lobby, and we encourage people to take action on bills of interest to the secular community. We are building relationships with lawmakers. We have been down there now, like I said, since 2010. So our relationships are just getting stronger and stronger. And our legal committee responds to complaints from anyone all over the state. In fact, I know Dianne is working on one right now that just came in. It's a great service that we offer to the community, and Dianne loves to write letters. And her sometimes that's all it takes, right, Dianne, is a letter. Dianne also is our coordinator with national groups when they, the attorneys from FFRF and American Atheists and other national groups like the reproductive rights groups and things like that, they want to work here in Arizona on some, not legislation, but lawsuits. Yes, lawsuits. Dianne coordinates with them, and she runs a fantastic program with lots of volunteers. So, but she always needs more, so I let her put a plug in for that.
And legal interns from ASU and U of A.
Yes. So this is what I titled this presentation. It's called "Don't Call Arizona a Blue State." Although we are nonpartisan at Secular AZ, this is just something that really bothers me when people call Arizona a blue state. Because Christian nationalism is tied to conservative politics, but not only that, it's also tied to some, and you're going to hear some surprises here, but there's also Democrats that support Christian nationalism. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what is Christian nationalism and what it looks like at the Arizona State Capitol. And, oh, hold on. There we go. So Arizona certainly looks like a blue state. Joe Biden wins Arizona. We
So
look
said
like
the frauded people.
yes, yes. He got more votes after the audit. We certainly look like a blue state, don't we? Look at this. We have 2 US senators, both Democrats.
Oh,
In our
really?
last well, we like to think of that they are, but I agree. Okay, we legalized marijuana. That kind of looks like a blue state, doesn't it? Oh, we passed a statewide tax to fund education. We sure did. That looks like a blue state. That that got undone at the legislature. So we'll talk more about that. We look like a blue state, don't we? We elected 2 Democrats to the Corporation Commission. Statewide races. But guess what? Our Arizona state lawmakers, Mark Fincham specifically, attended and actively participated in the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. Not only that, he's under investigation right now for helping. Additionally, this gentleman here is former Representative Anthony Kern. He did lose his election, so on January 6th, he was no longer elected to the Arizona State Legislature, but he has been in the Arizona State Legislature up until that point. So I like to include that he was there.
Loosely using the word gentleman.
Yes, loosely, that's true. So what are we up against in Arizona? We have a highly partisan Senate and House, and we've had this for years. And it's despite the fact that the GOP only maintain a single vote majority in each chamber. You would not know it based on what they did this session. Our political reality is that the bills of the minority party, they rarely move. If they do move, they're like softball bills, like the easy ones, the ones that everybody can kind of agree on. And atheist lawmakers are continually disrespected at the Arizona State Capitol. And Christian nationalism is well funded. The Center for Arizona Policy, the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Arizona Catholic Conference, all have strong lobbying presence at the Arizona State Capitol. And that is what we are up against.
And $1 million budgets.
Millions. The Alliance Defending Freedom, last time I checked, something like $56 million.
6 million in Arizona alone.
Oh my gosh. And the Center for Arizona Policy is around 2 million, 2.5 million. Yeah. So I want to introduce you to Andrew Seidel. Most of you already know him. He has written a book on Christian nationalism. And so I pulled some excerpts from his book here for you to read. But basically, Christian nationalism, it's a way to control. It's about power and control. It's less about religion and it's more about power and control. The United States is a Christian nation founded on Christian principles, and that promoting that belief is a religious duty. And that is the message that they're sending. Additionally, Catherine Stewart has written another book and talking about Christian nationalism, where she says basically that they are replacing democratic institutions and the American system of government with a kind of biblical-based rule. They are imbuing public institutions with a very select and punitive biblical morality, and they're drafting model legislation that they share with many states. And I will tell you that I was working on national politics this last legislative session, along with local politics. And Arizona is one of 6 states that had the most activity on Christian nationalism. So we are right up there with Arkansas, Missouri, Florida, Mississippi, a little bit. And I'm trying to think, oh, of course, it's South Carolina is the other one that I was thinking of. So this is where we're at. Christian nationalism is alive and well, and all of those states are very far red states. And here we are in Arizona with all of these, Democrats elected to statewide offices, and we are right up there with the very red states. What does it look like? What does it look like? So Christian nationalism at our state capitol You're going to see laws that privilege religion and allow discrimination based on religious principles. Again, that the atheists are disrespected, ignored, and even mocked. We have been mocked at least once a year at the Arizona State Capitol on the floor of the legislature. And yes, go ahead.
I want to say that these privilege laws are not based on religious principle. They're based on religious belief. All you have to do is say, I believe and I'm religious. There's no principle behind it whatsoever.
That's true. That's it. That's it. There's no test.
And we can't ask. We can't test because everyone's entitled to their own belief.
That's right. That's right. And in our state too, you'll see anti-science things, censoring information that doesn't align with the Christian faith. You'll see anti-LGBTQ legislation and legislation denying transgender people certain rights. They love to send public dollars for religious purposes in education, healthcare, homelessness, addiction. I believe, Dianne, you have a special project you're working on with the 12-step programs.
Oh, yes, we did that. We had issues with judges requiring that people that were on probation go to AA, which is specifically a religious program, as we all know. And some of the people didn't want to go to AA because of the religious philosophy of it. So they either didn't go or they said they wanted to go somewhere else, and the court said no. Well, they have to allow them because that's violating their religious belief. And Arizona does have a baby RFRA, Religious Freedom Act, in our state law. So one of our volunteers did write a whole pamphlet, a brochure on the laws regarding the fact that courts must allow probationers or parolees, whomever, to go to a non-religious program, and then listed the non-religious programs available in the state. And we succeeded in getting that out to literally every city, county, and state court judge in the state.
Wow, that's really impressive. Way to go, Dianne. Well done. And these are the kinds of things that our legal program can do under Dianne's direction and with all these amazing volunteers that she's training. What else does secular AZ do? Well, legislatively, we do lawmaker education. So this year in particular, for our secular studies program, we focused on Christian nationalism. And now we have many lawmakers at the state capitol who attended those sessions. I believe we had 17 that came to all three. Andrew Seidel was one speaker. Catherine Stewart was the second speaker. And Dr. Albert Solosa, who is with Phoenix College, a local religious studies professor, he did the third one. So we are educating lawmakers. We got them all copies of Andrew's book. The goal is, this is all long-term because we want, when the legislative majority, we want the legislative majority to someday be full of people who understand about Christian nationalism. And so we are working very hard to do that.
Well, I would say we want people who understand about the Constitution and the rule of law and democracy. That's what we want people to understand. It
would be wonderful if wouldn't it be? We also participate in direct lobbying where we, speak directly to lawmakers. Specifically, like I text lawmakers when they're on the floor voting to make sure that if they're not voting a way that I think they should, I let them know and give them the information. We could change minds immediately, or we can change minds before the fact, or we can not change any minds at all. And we'll talk a little more about that. We build and we work within coalitions. Now, this is so important because we can't do this work by ourselves. We can try, but our success is when we reach out to other groups and we work with them for the same goals. This has been with our sex education. We've been working on comprehensive sex education. We have this group that we put together. And then we also work within a reproductive rights coalition. And that has been going very well for us, building relationships with the community and getting the word out about secular AZ. We also show up to committee, we testify, and we put out action alerts so that all of you can also use the legislature's request to speak system to have your voice heard as well.
And also in the legal program, we will assist Tory by doing background research, drafting. We've actually had some law students who testified and went to committee hearings, those kinds of things, to provide the legal support that the friendly legislators need in order to make the arguments that we know need to be made.
Yes, indeed. So this year we had a whopping 70 bills of interest that we were following. And I say it that way because I've been doing this for so many years and I've never had a legislative session as big as this one. It was unprecedented in the number of bills that we opposed that moved. And when I say move, I mean that got a committee hearing. There was 1 week during the legislative session where I had one day where there were 5 bills in one morning that I needed to testify on. And I literally had, this was all via Zoom because the legislature closed to the public. So there was one day I literally had 5 different screens just waiting. And luckily though, I was able to make all of those meetings. So that was great. But this is just not normal. This is just not normal. In previous years, I've had maybe 2 on the same day, and that's doable. 5 was a little rough. So here I've broken it down for you, and I'm sure you've had a chance to read over this to see where we were at with all the different issues that we work on. And I will go into some of these bills, and if you have specific questions that I don't go over, please feel free to ask them at the end. So let's or put them in the chat and we will answer them as we can. So I'd like to bring up a few examples of bills that we worked on this session. So the first bill I'd like to talk about is House Bill 2575. This is a bill which privileges clergy over, or privileges clergy to be able to visit people in the hospital when they are sick. And it does not give the same privilege to non-clergy members. That means that potentially a rabbi could be turned away, a humanist could be turned away. There's no protection for atheists to have someone come visit them. And I bring up the very sad story of our dear friend Mark, who was with the Kingman Freethinkers, who basically died of COVID. And he was a very safe person, but he still contracted COVID and he ended up in the hospital for several weeks and he suffered alone. And under this legislation, I understand the spirit of the legislation, which is to make sure that people have their spiritual needs met. And so what we did with this bill was we asked the legislature, and we lobbied for the legislature to take out the word clergy and instead put something like spiritual advisor, because then nobody could be turned away. And this is along the lines of these religious freedom discussions we've been having. Well, and go ahead, Dianne.
But in addition, we also argued about the fact that who should decide who gets to be with you at your dying hours? Should it be the legislature? Or shouldn't the person who is dying choose? Maybe they don't want a spiritual leader at all. Maybe they would rather have their mother or their wife or their child rather than any spiritual leader. Even if they are religious, they might choose not to have a spiritual leader. Who should decide that? Should the legislature decide who you get to be at your deathbed? No, it shouldn't just be clergy or spiritual leader at all. It should be whomever the sick person chooses. That wasn't even, that amendment I couldn't even get in.
We unfortunately didn't get any amendments in, even though we had sympathy from Republicans in committee who reached out and said they would work with us on putting an amendment on the floor. And it turned into radio silence. Unfortunately, we were not able to amend this bill. It was signed by the governor with significant bipartisan support from legislators. And that was the most frustrating part, is that we did do some education with some lawmakers. We did change some minds. We did. However, there were still lawmakers, all Republicans voted for this bill, and some Democrats did as well.
Yep.
Another bill on religious privilege, House Bill 2648. This is the flagship bill that we worked on this session. This was a bill that we created a coalition to fight against. Our coalition included partners such as American Atheists and the ACLU nationally got involved in this, as well as the local chapter. Additionally, we had Equality Arizona working with us. We had we had religious folks working with us on this bill. So let me tell you a little bit about what the bill does. House Bill 2648, the simplest thing I can say is it provides sweeping criminal and civil liability protections for this broad definition, okay, of religious organizations, including, you don't even have to be affiliated with a religious sect. This would include places such as Grand Canyon University, a Christian university. So it would give them criminal and civil liability protections. So let's take that example. Grand Canyon University gives them these protections to discriminate. I don't know how else to say it, and maybe Dianne wants to jump in on this one too. Basically saying, as long as it's if they say they're doing something under their religious, because of their religion, they can do whatever they want. Yeah. And it started as, what they were billing it as was a pandemic exemption bill, which we opposed from the start as a pandemic exemption bill also. We don't think there should be exceptions based on religion, but they billed it as a pandemic exemption bill, but really it was very sneaky because they stuck this other stuff in there. And it is probably the broadest religious exception bill that I have seen since Senate Bill 1062 back in 2013, which was a big RFRA bill. Dianne, do you want to add anything about this bill?
Well, the definition of religious organization was anything. Two people meet together and say, I'm a religious organization. You don't have to have been incorporated or do anything else. You just meet and you say, I'm a religious organization. And then you can do anything. You can discriminate in the sale of your house. You can discriminate in who you allow in your business. You don't have to hire people. You can fire people. You can do anything, criminal and civil immunity. So that means we already know how much immunity the priests have for sexual abuse, but it would be complete immunity for them. And anything would have been criminal. Remember, it says criminal. So I can beat somebody up because they were together on the street with a white man and a black woman, and that's against my religion. So I get to beat them up, and you have criminal immunity because it's done based on my religion. It's what I believe. It was absolutely that broad. And Martin Quesada argued this. I mean, I argued it and others argued it. And the Republican lawyer just kept saying, oh, no, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. And Martin said, you don't have to be a lawyer to read these words and see that that is exactly what it says. Well, thank heavens it didn't pass, but it's going to come back.
Spoiler alert. It didn't pass. Very proud of the work that we did on this bill. Dianne and I teamed up with Dianne's legal expertise and working with the attorneys. We were basically, what happened with this bill is in the House of Representatives, it passed the House of Representatives with bipartisan support. There were 7 Democrats who voted with the 31 Republicans. And I am not convinced that they would have changed their votes, even after we explained this to them, because some of them were in denial that it did what we said it would do. Mm-hmm. We're like, that is denial. And I can list them off for you if you want. We have them also, we have the entire list of Republicans and Democrats who voted for this bill on our scorecard, and also featured in our legislative report, which is very thorough and gives information about all the bills. I should actually, if I can ask Ron or Alex to put a link to that in the chat, it's based off of on our website. So essentially it passed through the House, but by the time it got to the Senate, I can guarantee there was not a single Democrat who was going to vote for this in the Senate. And on top of that, we got some Republicans against it, secretly against it. They wouldn't come out publicly and say that, but they were adamant they would not vote for this bill. And because of that and our actions, and we stayed on top of this bill. Oh, I forgot, it was the National Council of Jewish Women. They
Yes.
also were heavily involved in this. Yes, we stayed on top of this bill. We did not let it go. And as Dianne said, it will be back. I anticipate it will be back. However, I do believe that the Republican, at least one Republican in the Senate, is still going to be against this bill unless they significantly change it. But my understanding from him is that he told the bill sponsor, and which is the Alliance Defending Freedom, by the way, the attorney Dianne referenced, it was an attorney from the Alliance Defending Freedom who was up there defending this bill. So anyone who votes for this bill, they're voting for the Alliance Defending Freedom, and that is Christian nationalism, and that's all you need to know. So it did lose all Democrat support in the Senate. I'm not convinced if it had gone back to the House that everyone would have voted with us, but we'll never know because it never made it back to the House. We killed it. Good job, Dianne. Good job, everyone. Let's talk about House Bill 2494. This bill is an amazing, amazing bill. It has been introduced at the Arizona State Legislature for 3 years and has never received a committee hearing. It did receive a committee hearing this year in the Senate in Education. This bill basically says, if you are a member of the clergy and you hear about child abuse, you have to report it. That's all this bill says, because I don't know if you know this, but right now in Arizona, they don't have to. And in fact, there is an ongoing legal case out of Bisbee where a man was sexually abusing his children. He told his Mormon priest, the Mormon priest told the bishop or whomever, and they never told authorities. It took years. I believe it was another 4 years. He had another child and was sexually abusing that child as well in that time, until a new priest or bishop, I'm not sure which one it was, heard the information and did report it. So
the children are suing him, right?
I think so.
The children who were injured are suing.
And all of this could have been avoided if the original priest had reported it. So this bill, all it does is require that. Surprisingly, it failed to pass committee. And the only reason why this got brought up was because there is actually a Republican senator named Paul Boyer who cares a lot about this issue. And he also cares a lot about other issues, which we don't agree with him on. But on this one, we agree. And so I'm very grateful to him that he not only chaired a committee, that he brought this forward under his name. And so I have to give him credit for that. When the bill failed to pass committee, it failed to pass on bipartisan lines. There were Democrats who were not willing to give priests, Catholic priests, to get them, what they said was that there was canon law involved, that the priests have a solemn duty not to share information that they get in confession, that they could lose their priesthood. These are the arguments made by some Republicans and Democrats who voted against this bill. The reason why was they were protecting the priests.
Canon law does not override constitutional law or democratic law passed by the people. Canon law should be limited to the religion, not to protecting innocent children or anything else that has to do with the public.
Indeed. This is Christian nationalism. This is it. We we can see it. It's not some intangible thing. We can actually see it happening at our Arizona State Capitol when they decide to protect priests over children who are being abused. So hopefully this bill will come back and we'll have a more favorable vote next session. All right, let's talk about Senate Bill 1456, which is regarding sex education. So Senate Bill 1456, it made a lot of changes. It removes sex ed for K through 4, changes our state from opt-out to opt-in, requires the schools to post detailed materials and host many public meetings, basically putting up lots of roadblocks in the way of talking about LGBTQ. This was all a response to the removal of the no promo homo law a year and a half or 2 years ago. So this bill went through the entire process. It passed on party lines in both chambers. It got to the governor and he vetoed the bill. Then he put out a statement, an executive order, basically saying, hey, everybody, you still have to do some of these things, but you still have to do some of these things. He was trying to make them happy. And I have to say, all he was saying was things that were already in law. So we were not concerned with that. But then what happened was Senator Nancy Bartow got into some discussions with the governor about what he would sign, what he would approve. And she wrote a bill that basically took his executive order, codified it, made it worse, and made the bill worse, actually, by, and it passed. It was a freight train at that point. She got special permission to introduce it way after we had already finished the committee hearings, the rules. So we were all not very prepared to hear this bill, but we all jumped anyway. When I say not very prepared, I actually don't mean that. We were all prepared. We just didn't know it was coming. It surprised us. She brought it up as a strike everything amendment. She brought it into committee, special rules. It passed. It is now the law. So we are fighting a bad sex ed law right now. I believe it said that they couldn't talk about sexuality, something like that. Dianne, do you recall specifically what it said?
No, I don't have it on the top of my head right now.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. We had so many bills.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what was that one again? During session, it was hard to breathe. It was hard to breathe, but we did the best we could. And the veto was a win. The next bill coming through, there was nothing we could do about it at that point. We had done everything we possibly could. So House Bill 2035 is the striker bill. It was signed into law very quickly. No hesitation on the governor's part. Senate Bill 1457. This is the abortion ban that you may have heard about from Arizona. Dianne is actively working with the National Organization for Women to be a part of a lawsuit against this bill. So I'm not sure, Dianne, if you want to take a lead on this one and talk about it. Okay.
Well, the state now is a plaintiff in this case. For various reasons, the National Reproductive Rights Center decided they did not want Secular Coalition to be a plaintiff for various strategic reasons, at least at this point in time. So anyway, there are several, 3 or 4 doctors. There's Arizona Medical Association, National Council for Jewish Women, several people and groups that are plaintiffs in this case opposing this. Obviously, there are 2 main issues: the reason ban, which, you have to give a reason why you're having an abortion, which you should not. You can say it's none of your business, which is what every woman should do. But we already have in law the sex and race reason ban. And so now they've added genetic abnormality reason ban. So that was one of the main arguments, was the reason ban. And the second main argument is the personhood ban. For years they've tried to put personhood into the law, which would make a zygote a person from the moment of conception, which is the belief of only the Catholic Church. No other churches believe this, and many churches have absolute specific rules on the other side of that question. So this is putting into law the unscientific belief of one particular church. And that's exactly where Christian nationalism is going, to put their determination or interpretation of law, of belief, Christian belief, into the law. And they succeeded here. So that would mean, for example, that I asked, well, does that mean that a pregnant woman gets to vote twice? Because if she's pregnant and this is a person, well, then every pregnant woman should vote twice, right? It also means men have to pay child support starting from the night that you had sex. So guys, think about that. Obviously, it's a person, so you got to start paying child support. So, I mean, there's just a myriad of lunatic results that come from this interpretation. So anyway, the case was filed. They responded, the Attorney General, and there was oral argument. They asked for a preliminary injunction because of being a statute, it goes into effect on September 29. So they asked for an injunction to stop it from going into effect while it's being litigated. It is intended to go to the Supreme Court, as many of these cases are specifically intended to go to the Supreme Court for the specific purpose of overturning Roe v. Wade, if it's not already overturned. So the injunction hearing was on the 22nd, September 22nd, last Wednesday. And I sat in on it by phone. Everything was by phone. It was almost a 2-hour hearing with the judge is Reyes, Doug Reyes, and he questioned our side for about 1 hour and 10 minutes and the other side for about 50 minutes. And he did not allow them to make arguments. He just had very specific questions for each of them. So it's what we call a hot bench, i.e. the judge has done his homework. He knows what's going on. He has very specific questions about the case. It's not he's waiting for you to tell him what it's about. He knows what it's about. So the first hour I was very dispirited. I thought, oh my God, we're in trouble. But then the second hour, the way he grilled the Attorney General, who didn't seem to have many answers about anything, who kept saying, I don't know. Well, I don't know what that means. Well, you could sever that. Well, that might not be right. Yeah, okay. Well, the law is contradictory. And I'm going. So anyway, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't have a decision yet. We absolutely must have a decision before September 29. So I would anticipate tomorrow, because he had the weekend to actually write up whatever the decision is going to be. But I'm hoping, obviously, we hope for the best, but we'll have it before Wednesday. And that's all I can tell you.
Thank you, Dianne, for all of your work on that. So essentially, this abortion ban, it bans certain kind of abortions. It criminalizes doctors. Mm-hmm. And then I just don't get this. It allows presumptive fathers or their families to sue the provider if the mother has a banned abortion.
Yes.
So it's very interesting. And I also want to note that this is one of many reproductive bills that we opposed this session. We were able to kill or stop most of them, but this is the one. This is one that passed. There's a few more that I'm going to talk about that passed in the budget. Just another sign that we did our work very well. It didn't pass the normal way. They had to stick it in the budget. We'll talk more about that, but reproductive rights are under attack at the Arizona State Capitol, and it's all based in Christian nationalism, all of it. And I would bet on this, there's going to be a 6-week abortion ban, just like Texas. We're going to see it next session. I'm 100% sure we'll see the bill. I'm 90% sure it will pass and be signed by the governor. I mean, it's just all part of this nationally coordinated structure of Christian nationalism being pushed into our state legislatures to get these bills passed. And as Dianne said, overturn Roe v. Wade. So they're going to come at it from many different angles. And I believe Wendy Rogers has already said she's going to introduce it. If we see someone like Nancy Bartow get on board, governor will probably sign it.
And Kathy Harrod also said that she's going to get it introduced.
Of course. And she'll do it. She'll do it through Senator Bartow, probably. So, okay. This is the bad news. I'm so sorry to have such bad news.
On a Sunday morning.
I'm like, let's go back to the one that we won, 2648. Just kidding. Oh, more school vouchers. So school vouchers are when you use public tax dollars to pay for private religious education. That's it. It's Christian nationalism. We have school vouchers here in Arizona. They're called empowerment scholarship accounts. We've had them for a long time, and they try to expand it every single year. This bill would have expanded it out to include children eligible for free and reduced price lunches and children receiving Title I services. That's huge. Just so you know, if you're not familiar with the school system, that is expanding it out so large. Anyway.
I think more than half the kids in Arizona get our Title I.
I think so too. I know that
I think it's more than 50%.
We live in a school district. The largest elementary school district in the state, I think, is the one I'm in, and we're all Title I.
Yeah.
My kids get free lunches just because they go to these schools. So here's the status of the expansion of the ESA. It passed House committee. It passed rules. It failed on a floor vote, but passed as part of a budget deal. They stuck it in the budget. So again, this is another example of advocates working very hard, and they just put it in the budget. This is what I was explaining to you before, where they barely have a majority, 31 to 29, an ideological majority, let's call it that. And it does not matter that it's slim. They figured out ways to get the things done that they wanted to do. And
now, there is a lawsuit against this and some of the other bills that were included in the budget deal. You know that, because they're supposed to be single subject, they're supposed to be germane and all of that sort of thing. So 4 of these bad things they have been sued about, but we don't know the result of that lawsuit yet.
Right. So we have other tools in our toolbox, is what Dianne is saying. And even though it may seem like there's a bunch of bad news, it's advocates are still fighting hard. And those of us at Secular AZ can really use your support, as we move forward, because we are continuing. These bills are not going to stop. They're going to just keep coming, and we must continue to work against them and use all the tools in our toolbox. And another anti-science bill was House Bill 2190 that prohibits state, basically says that if you're a state government, or if you're a local government, state government, if you're a university, you can't, if you're a public school, you can't mandate masks or vaccines. It passed as part of the health budget bill. So it did not pass on its own. Again, it passed as part of the health budget bill. And that is why you saw all of the commotion between school districts and the governor at the beginning of the school year. And I would like to say, my school district masked up and I felt comfortable sending my son to school. They defied the governor.
And I want to point out the hypocrisy here. These same people say that businesses should be able to do whatever they want. So they should not have to serve LGBT people. And they brought a lawsuit a couple of years ago attacking the city ordinance in Phoenix about that very thing. Public accommodations law businesses should not have to accommodate everyone because, hey, businesses have rights. They can say no. But now, if a business wants to make a decision and say, you can't come in unless you wear a mask, suddenly businesses don't have rights. Now, all of a sudden, no, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean you get to make that decision, only the ones I like. So they completely talk out of both sides of their mouths about everything.
It's frustrating. Well, so that was skimming the surface. I know that was a lot of bills that we just talked about. It was a lot to process. And like I said, we have all of the bills that we worked on in more details in that legislative report on our website. How can you help? Well, continue on. Use our action alerts. Sign up for our email list and you'll get action alerts during session. Our action alerts will tell you what's going on and what you can do. We'll give you specific instructions. You can support our lobbying and visibility efforts by liking and commenting on any of our social media pages and sharing those posts. So you can do all of that. And of course, you can donate to Secular AZ because we are completely funded by folks here in Arizona. We do not receive national support. Do you have a
I want a $6 million budget.
Yes, wouldn't that be
You better
nice?
all start ponying up here.
You can also donate your talents if you have, history with videography, graphic design, media connections, anything like that. Just hit us up. Let us know if you have a talent to donate. And of course, I know when speaking to an affiliate group with the Liaise group at Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix, just keep doing what you're doing. Y'all are here showing up, learning, educating yourself, and be active in your own secular communities, because that just grows our secular community statewide.
Well, I want to add one other thing, which is we put out a weekly newsletter, and we focused on Christian nationalism a couple of times to educate people. And we've also do very short videos that we're putting up all over the place, which also educate about Christian nationalism to get out the word of how dangerous this ideology is. So we hope you will see those and spread them as well.
Indeed. So we hope that you will donate to us to support our lobbying and legal team efforts. And I think this is it. That's it. So I'm happy to take questions. I see the chat is pretty active.
Yeah, I think it's time for Q&A.
All right.
All righty. So yeah, that's amazingly sobering.
Happy Sunday.
Yeah. If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand and I will call on you. There's not many questions that came in via chat. One from Ed was something to consider playing the curmudgeon. How many of these bad bills would have been enacted if Arizona Senate had a filibuster rule? Yeah. So my question is, so I often use Shahira law to show a theocracy and compare Christian nationalism to Shahira law. Both are, or Shahira law is strongly opposed by conservatives and Christians. Is there a good way to message that? Is that an accurate comparison? And is that a useful comparison?
Well, you know, I lived in Algeria and I know quite a bit about Sharia law. So I'm not sure how well that would work without fanning the flames of Islamophobia. I mean, it would just fan discrimination against Muslims, which we don't want to do.
Yeah, I agree with Diane that it's something we're trying not to do anymore because of that reason. We want to make sure to be respectful of our friends in the Muslim community. And so, yeah, we try not to do that anymore. And instead, we just talk about Christian nationalism and we point to the specific examples of what's happening right here, right now. This is what's happening in the United States. We have Christian nationalism. They are taking our rights away. They are using our public dollars to fund religious education. It is about power. It is not about religion. It is all about power. And the more we talk about it and the more we point to it, we can really show folks that this is happening right here, and we all need to work together. Like you could see the fight is hard. And without the secular coalition for Arizona, some of these bills that didn't pass would have passed. Often we have found ourselves alone talking about these things sometimes, but I have to say, like, more and more we're getting more allies on our side, and appreciate that very much.
Okay. Jennifer reiterates that she wants to hear Tory and Diane's opinion on the filibuster in the Arizona legislature.
I actually don't have an opinion on this. Diane, do you?
Well, I certainly have an opinion on the national one. It hasn't been useful. It's been used since it started to stop civil rights laws, positive laws, those kinds of things. I can't imagine it would be used any differently here, particularly since the Republicans have been in control since somewhere around the 1960s. And we would not be, well, they've already done what they've done, and I can't imagine they'd be any better.
Okay. Next up, we have Roy. Roy, go ahead.
I have to unmute myself. I was just wondering if there was a secular Texas organization.
That's a great question. So the answer is yes. The Texas has a chapter of American Atheists, and that chapter has the support of American Atheists, and American Atheists sends out yeah, it's really mediocre. Honestly, they have a couple of volunteers who, if they can make it to the Capitol, can go. And American Atheists is working hard nationally, writing letters and getting involved in the testimony in that state. There is no secular coalition for Texas that just doesn't exist. We are the only statewide group in the entire country that has active lobbying efforts by a professional at the state capitol. So the longer answer is no. They don't have a group, but they have a national group that has noticed what's going on. Oh, and Texas is another one of those red states where things were crazy this year. So it's quite unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate. But that's not to say there aren't any Texas free thinking groups, or, there's lots of those groups around, but around the country, to have a group like Secular AZ that is organized and, established and able to fundraise to hire a lobbyist and to have this legal team and all of that is, we're one of a kind.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, because it's all thanks to our supporters here in Arizona that we can even do this.
So again, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'll go ahead and ask one of mine. Oh, no, Marie has one. Has Secular Coalition supported the 6 petitions to put AZ laws on tax, etc. on the ballot?
Well, as an individual, I certainly have, and many of us have. I don't think there was any official position taken about them, but I know many of us have actually worked very hard, and some still are getting the signatures.
You mentioned earlier in the presentation the work with comprehensive sex education. What is that program? Who is that with specifically?
You mean the coalition that we've built?
Correct.
Okay, that's a great question, Ron. So basically, we have a coalition of activists from different organizations, including, and I can't list them off the top of my head, but I believe there's like 25 different organizations. We have organizations that are LGBTQ advocates. We have several of those, including especially for transgender children. And we also have places, heavy hitters like Planned Parenthood involved, because they do a lot of community education. We have the Arizona Family Health Partnership involved in that group as well, and that they're completely nonpartisan and just work on health. That's all they do is health. We have a lot of like that. We have some student groups from ASU who we like to put at the front, and now and in fact, we've passed on the leadership role to the students at ASU, and I am providing them with some support behind the scenes. But what we want is for the students to lead the group in a sense. And so that's kind of the gist of it. And what we're working for is legislation that we as a group all agreed on. What does comprehensive sex education look like in Arizona? What should it look like? We have a bill. It's been introduced. It hasn't had a hearing, but it will be ready to go. We really need to focus on elections so we can get the right people in, so we can get these bills heard. So that group collectively wrote legislation that is good for Arizona. And we also have, I believe, some educators in that group. So it's not just secular, but it has health and other advocates too.
Awesome. Thank you. Kirk Alexander from Tucson, I believe. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. I'll just read my question off the chat. Does secular Arizona rate or otherwise evaluate legislators on the religious, non-religious spectrum?
Do you mean like what their religious affiliation is, or how they vote on issues important to us?
Well, both, I suppose.
Okay, so we don't keep track of their religious affiliations. We try to find the atheists, and that's about it. Everybody else, is just religious to us. Secondly, we keep a scorecard on our website, and you can go to secularaz.org. And I'm trying to remember what tab it's under, but we can pull one up and put in. So we do have a scorecard, and you can see exactly how lawmakers voted. So I know, like, for example, in Tucson, there is a primary maybe for a congressional seat. I heard maybe there wouldn't be. It depends on how the lines are drawn. But there is a primary down in Tucson for Congressional District 2. If there is one, there are 2 lawmakers who are running for that seat, and you can see how they voted on secular issues and see if you want to support one or the other if you live in Tucson. So the scorecard comes in really handy, really handy. You can also see which Republicans have voted with secular AZ, and you can see which Democrats, it's really very interesting to see like who's in the middle, like who's on either extreme, and who gets the lowest score. One year it was Kavanaugh because he disrespected our friend Anita. Where is Anita? She's around. She's on. There she is. Anyway, we'll never forget that, Anita. But
yeah, either will I. Either will I. And
Yeah.
I really wanted to talk to John personally, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, so it's all on our website, secularaz.org. And you can see previous years too. We keep them all up.
Thank you, Tory. I'm going to attend the LD3 meeting tomorrow, and I'm just, I was kind of curious to know what I was walking into.
Let's see, LD3, is that Rosanna Gabaldon?
It's yeah, I should know that, right? Andres Cano, Alma Hernandez, and Salian Gonzalez.
Oh, well, Alma Hernandez voted against us. She voted with the Christian Nationalists. Feel free to bring that up.
Okay, thank you.
But so did Gonzalez on that one bill.
Gonzalez did too. She
Yes,
did. She did on the clergy bill.
On the Catholic clergy bill. Yes, she did. She
The child abuse.
Yeah, the child abuse one.
Yeah, it was a hard one for her because she's Catholic, and so she basically said that. She's like, I'm Catholic, I don't know that I can. But she's also been a supporter of ours in years past too. So you just never know. You just never know. But I believe and Alma voted also for the hospital clergy bill too. She voted for both.
Are there any other secular groups here in this? So I know there's a secular caucus within certain parties. How active are you in those?
Not. Yeah, there's a secular. I have tried to help bring people to those things, but I try to stay out of party politics personally. That's just been how I've been. Maybe I shouldn't have, but that's how
as a lobbyist, you need to do that.
Just kind of, but I don't think it matters though. Everyone thinks I'm a Democrat, so.
I have given them certain supports and things like that over the few years that they've existed.
Yeah, it's important to have these secular caucuses within the parties. And so the Democratic Party has started a secular caucus. And why is that important? And if there's anyone here involved in the Democratic Party, PCs, you should join the secular caucus because we have Democrats who vote against Christian nationalism. So we have to keep spreading the word and educating folks about Christian nationalism, because it is scary for some folks to vote against religious or things that they perceive to be religious. It's hard for them unless they understand Christian nationalism. And I will say that Representative and now Senator Raquel Terán, she is one that I really appreciate because she is religious, and sometimes she wonders about whether or not something is based in Christian nationalism, and she asks. So she's one of my favorite lawmakers because she
Yeah.
understands why it's important to vote against Christian nationalism.
Unconstitutional.
And I want to point out something about it. We just published an article in Ms. Magazine, Bob McWhirter, who, as you know, is a constitutional lawyer, and myself, it was in Ms. Magazine, about Christian nationalism. It is nothing about Christianity. It is not about belief. It is about control. And that's the goal. It's nothing to do with belief. And that's what has to be explained. And as we explained in this article, education is not going to defeat this ideology. I mean, we do educate, but you well know that beliefs are not educated out of your head. I mean, you have to have the personal experience to get to you to understand this does not work. This does not work for me. And if you read this article, it shows how Christian nationalism has developed over the years, and that the belief is only violence will bring about the change we need. Only violence. And we saw that in the insurrection on June 6th. We've seen it since. We saw it before, and it's gotten worse, as we all know. So their bottom line is that in order to be an American, you have to be white and you have to be a Christian. That is nothing to do with the way the country was founded at all, but they're not dealing on constitutional principles or on true history. So we try to get that point across. And Raquel actually called me up after she made that mistake, and she said, "Oh, I made a mistake, but I understand now, and I'm going to fix that." And she did.
She did. She did. I really value her quite a bit at the legislature, because it is their education can work in some cases, and that's a case where it would work. So that's why we keep talking about it. Educate.
Well, she wasn't a Christian nationalist to start with, but it doesn't work on them.
It does not work on them, but it works on the folks who are not Christian nationalists, but who are Christians. Basically, they're not Christian nationalists, they're just Christians, that's their faith. And educating them will work with them generally.
Beth.
Two hands up.
Yep, Beth, you're up first, and then we have Roy again.
Hi, I'm Beth Haupt from Mesa, and I'm one of Diane's volunteer attorneys. So I've been listening to board of supervisors and city council invocations all summer, and I just wanted to mention that where people feel conflicted about voting for something that's against their religion, some of these prayers even say, "May all that we accomplish here today be for your will and serve, bring you." And I just I remind them that they are elected by, it's a secular government that derives its authority from the consent of the government, not from God. And their duty is to their constituents, not God first. And you can remind them that, like, when it first started with Kennedy, as far as I remember, but presidential candidates that have been Catholic have always been put through the gauntlet of, are they really going to be able to serve the people, because they have to serve the Pope, right? And just because these are all Reformed Christians, so now they serve God directly instead of through a Pope, but it's the same thing. Their elected job is to their constituents, not to their God.
Beth, why don't you tell them about that invocation guide you did? That's on my list here to mention. So since you did it, why don't you tell them?
Oh, okay. Well, I wrote up, it's about 6 pages long, and it's a guidelines for legislative invocations. And it, of course, starts with the best practices, don't do them. But then it lists several other guidelines, like don't have it be done by a legislator, him or herself, or by a government employee. You have to have a fair policy. If you're inviting people in, you have to invite all the different religions or religious organizations that are in your community. If the supervisors are getting to choose them and they're only choosing Christians, that's that's a violation of, I mean, there's Supreme Court law on this. So yeah, it's giving people, here are the basic rules. They're not hard and fast rules. It's one of those where the courts look at the totality of the circumstances. But I'm just telling them, you can cross the line here, you could cross the line here, you could cross the line here, and hopefully they will maybe change what they're doing. But the ones that are really egregious, we're sending them letters also.
And also the invocation is for the board, not for the public. It's for the elected person. So it should
Primarily.
Yeah, primarily.
But yeah, there's the one opinion that emphasizes the primarily, not solely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I question them. Well, you don't do these at your special meetings. You don't do these at your executive meetings. You don't do these at your work sessions. You only do them when the public is present. Why is that?
The opposite of what it should be.
Right.
Thank you. Roy, go ahead.
Aren't all religions about control?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing I want to mention is one of the other volunteers, also a lawyer, has worked on the Know Your Rights brochure. Some of you may know that Americans United for Separation of Church and State put out these 3 great Know Your Rights brochures for schools, for students, for parents, and for teachers, about what your rights are in school, what they can do and what they can't do related to religious messaging, religious materials, distribution, use of the school by a religious group, etc. So they put out 3 separate ones. So we took them, and we have permission from them to use those as a basis for ours. And then we put in Arizona rules, Arizona law, blah, blah. And we're, I mean, it's done. It's at the point of being, crafted and then produced. So that will be out and available also on the website, and also for very limited purposes in hard copy, but mostly, as with Beth's stuff, it's mostly on the website to be downloaded, as opposed to hard copies, because nobody looks at them anymore. But anyway, so that's also coming out from the legal committee, will be the Know Your Rights brochures for students, teachers, and parents.
Very good. Ed Casper, go ahead, sir.
Just wanted to mention that I mentioned in the chat, but I'm going to mention here. I did have a chat with the chaplain at Banner Boswell Hospital here in Sun City. And she's telling me that Banner does not discriminate for clergy when it comes to visiting people. Now, if you know otherwise, please let me know and I'll let her know that, because that's supposed to be their policy. So just to let you know that. And number 2, I'd like to know, I just saw where the Independent Redistricting Commission has just issued its initial grid map.
Yeah.
So, and they're beginning to invite testimony. So just would like to urge anybody who's interested to get involved with that process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. I just want to say that I don't think that we're, it's the law can be used however they want to use it.
Yes.
So imagine not Banner, but how about Chandler Regional Medical Center? Chandler Regional Medical Center is owned by the Catholic Church. You would never know that by the name, right? But they are owned by the Catholic Church. And the question is, would they allow, like, let's say somebody wanted to have someone with them at their end of life, and we're in this pandemic, and exceptions are being made for religious people, but the non-religious person, would they allow a visitor? And the answer is probably no.
I will call and ask them.
Call and ask them. Also,
Since I'm part of an interfaith group, I'll call and ask them and see if maybe we can, again, as I've told Tory a couple of times, I'm trying to educate these people. They don't have to go by the letter of the law. If their policies are broader, then why not? So I'll ask them.
Broader, yes. They do narrow.
I'll ask them.
Yes, and we had they were at the committee hearing, the Dignity Health folks. This was their bill. And it was also an Alliance Defending Freedom bill. So they certainly were there. And they said they'll let everybody in. But this is the law. Like, the law is the law.
If you get our newsletter, we just had an article in our newsletter about that, about the Catholic privilege and the Catholic hospitals and all of that issue. So if you get our newsletter, it's in our newsletter. Please read that article. It was written by one of our law students who was an intern, and Priyanshi Shah down at the University of Arizona Law School in Tucson. So please read that article. It'll give you some details about this issue that you may not know.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, it's just been so nice to see all of your faces. And I just wanted to say thank you for having me once again. It's always a pleasure with the HSGP. Thank you.
Well, with that, go ahead.
I presume, Ron, that you've been checking the chat and that there's no more questions in there.
That is correct. That is correct. So
for those of you who asked for links to things, Whit, I'm hoping you put in the link to the videos and the newsletter and all that sort of thing.
Correct. There have been session wrap-up scorecards that go in there, the donation piece, and several others as well. Well, with that, are there anything that you'd like to wrap with? Anything you'd like to promote? We've got the links for Secular AZ. Anything else that you would like to wrap with before we call this complete?
If I just have 1 second, I do want to tell you something that most people do not know regarding the Texas lawsuit, SB 8, the one to stop abortion at 6 weeks. It's actually 4 weeks. But anyway, the first thing that came to my mind when I read that was Shelley versus Kramer. And any attorney should know Shelley versus Kramer, because when we all have to take constitutional law, and this is a major case that we all study. I talked to an attorney from Planned Parenthood, and she said, Shelley versus Kramer. Exactly. What was that case about? It was this, that this was Missouri, where they put restrictive covenants on deeds. And they said that if you want to sell your house, you may not sell to a Black person. And then when they were sued on that, and they went to court, and the state of Missouri said, it ain't me. The state's not doing it. These are private individuals who are enforcing their own property rights. That's exactly the same argument they're making in Texas. These bounty hunters aren't me. These are private people enforcing their own interest and rights. They have no rights, but their own rights. It's not the state of Texas doing this. It's Texas and themselves has been twice to the Supreme Court on exactly the same issue, where they gave powers to the Democratic Party, which was the bad party at that time, to prohibit Blacks from voting in primaries. There's two such different cases from Texas. And they gave the power to the Democratic Party in the primary to exclude Blacks. And then when the courts went to the Supreme Court, Texas said, it ain't me. It's the private organization. It's private people doing this. You can't hold me responsible. And every case said what? It's you. It's you, because the clerks have to take the suits when they file them. The judges have to decide on enforcement. It's you. It's state action. It's you. You are responsible and you can't do this. And that's the Shelley versus Kramer case was in 1948. That was the one about restrictive covenants, keeping Blacks from buying houses in certain areas. That was 1948. This is not a new strategy. This is an old strategy brought back. Kramer is Kraemer. Kraemer.
I have one quick question. I'm, as much as I hate to admit it, I'm from Missouri. And my ex-husband and I used to be very active in Columbia, Missouri politics in particular, and he is still there. And I would like to give him your contacts in case he is still has connections to people working.
Sure.
Okay, and he might be, you might, Columbia, of course, is the only sane part of all Missouri, I'll put it that way. And he might be in contact. I mean, he might still know people that could use your knowledge.
And we all have new emails, legal@secularaz.org, I guess it would be.
SecularAZ.org.
And I was just going to bring up that next Saturday, October 2nd, big women's march for reproductive rights. So please come out there. I'm not much of a walker, but I'm going to bring a chair and put myself right where I can be seen and bring some friends. So please get out there. You know, I never thought I would do this again. I remember doing this once a long time ago.
50 years ago.
No kidding, I know. So please come on out and support reproductive rights.
Yes, and here we are again. I'm so sick of it, I could just scream. And also October 3rd is Rosie Jimenez Day. Rosie Jimenez was the first woman that we know of who died after the Hyde Amendment prohibited funding for abortion. So that's October 3rd, the next day. And in Phoenix, well, it's an online panel. And then in Phoenix, they're having a candlelight vigil at 7:30 at the First Church at Willetta and 2nd Street. So the 2nd is the big march down at the Capitol, 10 a.m. And then Sunday is the Rosie Jimenez Day, which is going to be at First Church at 7:30 p.m. and a virtual panel during the day.
All right. Tory, anything you'd like to add and wrap up?
No, I'm just happy to see everybody and thanks for having me. And it was a lot of, there's a lot that happened, so a lot didn't get covered. And I may not have remembered all of the details, so go read the report because we worked really hard to write that report. So hopefully someone reads it. Very detailed. All the information is in there.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that, I wish to thank everyone for coming and getting clarity on this very sobering issue. Remember, if you enjoyed our content, then hit the subscribe button, contribute to our Patreon, become a member of HSGP, or better yet, volunteer to make the magic happen. With that,